Protestant Reformation was a 16th century religious, political, intellectual, and cultural uprising that split Catholic Europe, setting in place the structures and beliefs that would define the continent in the modern era. The European Renaissance era took place just before the Protestant Reformation. The Renaissance era was a cultural movement and a great revival of interest in the classical learning and values of ancient Greece and Rome. It ushered in new innovative technology and ways of thinking. Some of history's greatest and most enduring achievements in the arts have their roots in the Renaissance. Master artists of this period celebrated the beauty of God's creation, especially visible in humanity. After the Renaissance era died down a bit, the church and politics in Europe were in an unpredictable state because the church practiced exercises that were easily criticized, such as the scandal over the church's indulgences. The original intent of indulgences was to offer Christians a way of doing good as penance for their sins, but instead indulgences came to be seen as sort of a, quote, magic solution to sin rather than an element to support true Christian living. Indulgences started to become things that someone could buy and sell rather than earned through good works and prayer. An Augustinian friar, Martin Luther, unintentionally put a match to the fuse of the indulgence scandal. Martin Luther believed that only faith in God's love and mercy would justify sinners. This sharply contrasted with the belief in many church practices at the time, but most specifically the practice of indulgences.
Martin Luther translated the Bible into German and continued his output of vernacular pamphlets. Martin Luther, John Calvin, and Henry VIII challenged papal authority and questioned the Catholic Church's ability to define Christian practice. It went through all of Western Europe, and most of it took place in Germany. 16th century European movement meant to reform the beliefs and practices of the Roman Catholic Church. Martin Luther posted 95 theses on a church door, and he said the Bible should be the center to discern God's word, not the Pope. He also did not agree with the selling of indulgences. The 95 Theses contain three main documents that are called the Sola Scriptura, Sola Fide, and the Sola Gratia.
Buying and selling of indulgences.
What is this?
How are we gonna
Who does he think he is?
do this?
The Protestant Reformation started in the 16th century. The famous 95 Theses were posted in 1517. The movement quickly gained adherents in the German states, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, Scotland, and portions of France. Support came from sincere religious reformers, while others manipulated the movement to gain control of valuable church property. After the Reformation, they were forced to separate from the Catholic Church, and they established Lutheran churches in Germany, Scandinavia, and some Eastern European countries. They also established Reformed churches in Switzerland and the Netherlands. Presbyterian churches were established in Scotland and the Anglican Church in England. Albert of Prussia was the first ruler to break his country away from the church and built Lutheran churches. He seized all the Catholic assets and started to tax the clergy. Henry VIII of England was the first major ruler to break away. He left the church so he could divorce his wife and marry his mistress.
The Catholic Church was forced to respond and did so in several different ways during a period known as the Counter-Reformation. The Catholic Church recognized that some Protestant criticisms were valid, and successive sessions of the Council of Trent held between 1545 and 1563 aimed to tackle these issues. No church council, as the Catholic Encyclopedia puts it, has had so many questions of the greatest importance to decide. The council looked at some of the corruption then plaguing the church, including the issues such as the sale of indulgences, a system in which rich people could effectively buy forgiveness for their sins. Ultimately, the council defined many important aspects of the church life, such as the nature of original sin, the number of sacraments, and Christ's presence in the Eucharist. The Reformation has profoundly affected the modern view of politics and law. Prior to the Reformation, the Church governed politics. She controlled emperors and kings and governed the law of lands. The meaning of much Western literature is really quite meaningless apart from the understanding of the Reformation. Moreover, for all practical purposes, Martin Luther stabilized the German language in the realm of science. It is generally granted by modern historians that there would never have been modern science were it not for the Reformation. All scientific investigation and endeavor prior to that had been controlled by the Church. Only through sheer ignorance of history do many modern scientists believe that Protestantism, the true evangelical faith, opposes true science. The Reformation laid down once and for all the right and obligation of the individual conscience and the right to follow that dictates of the individual conscience. Many men who talk lightly and gladly about liberty never know nor realize that they owe their liberty to this event.